Hi, we're Mike and Alicia Hernon of the Messy Family Project, and we have 10 kids and 5 grandkids, and our ministry exists to help parents embrace their sacred calling. We do this through our podcast, resources, and online guides. So we are here today hosting Family with Shalom World.
High and flying or deep down by the sea, anywhere we wish to be. When we're loved, we're happy and free. Come together, we're all family. Time to shine a brighter light in our world. Time for unity and peace. Come and see how great we can be. Come together, we're all family. Come together, we're all family.
And we're talking today about an absolutely important skill, I guess, experience that we all have to have.
The habit of the home that we all need.
The habit of the home of forgiveness.
Yes.
And we started this whole series talking about parenting as a path to holiness. And on the path to holiness, you're inevitably going to stumble. We are all going to make mistakes. And really, holiness isn't making no mistakes. Holiness is repair.
Yeah.
Holiness is getting back up again, using the grace of God to become stronger in our relationship with our spouse and in our relationship with our children.
This is really a great measure of how your relationship in your marriage, as well as with your kids, really looks like. The measure of how quickly you can reconcile, how quickly you can forgive. So we want to talk about the pathway to do that, some strategies, and some healing and restoration that comes through the process of forgiveness. And so let's hear from some parents on some questions and challenges that they experience on forgiveness in the home.
It's very, very difficult to have the humility that's necessary to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, or to grant forgiveness. That's kind of my own difficulty there is the granting of forgiveness. So even though we know it's so important, it's still a struggle for sure.
You know, you're so busy trying to figure out how to guide your kids through life that you forget that forgiveness is a big part of it. And during conflict in the family, it's hard to remember that because the emotions are so high. I remember a time that my son had a huge argument with my wife, and I was very upset because of the way he was speaking to her. Now, he wasn't using curse words or being completely disrespectful, but his tone was disrespectful. And I remember after my wife walked away that I came into the room full of anger and immediately realized that was not gonna solve it. And it was a real strange moment where I had to swallow my pride as a man, as a husband, as a father, and find a way to get into his head and understand where he was coming from so that I would be able to guide him to be able to forgive the argument as well as me forgiving him for his tone. Forgiveness became something that comes with humility and listening and a real trying to understand the other, not just carrying your own baggage into the situation.
Your relationship as siblings is everything. Family is everything. And as life goes on, these are the people who have your back. And so therefore the need for forgiveness is ongoing, and it's so important to nurture that at a young age so that they know how to do it as they grow old and once, us as parents aren't here anymore.
When it comes to asking for forgiveness, the struggle that I would have is not asking quick enough. When you realize that you stepped in it, being humble and asking for forgiveness is what you need to do. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit prideful, and so then it takes some time for me to be humble and ask for that forgiveness.
As a parent, I've got to be the example to ask for forgiveness. And actually in our family, it's been my oldest daughter who actually has been a beautiful example. It's something that I tried to model, so hopefully she learned it from me, but she's really perfected it quite well. And even in the tumultuous teenage years, she would very often come back to me and say, you know, that situation, I'm really sorry that I acted that way. And that really taught me a lot. And as a mom, I kind of learned from her even how well to come back after an argument or after a difficult situation and just come back and ask for forgiveness. It's become just a really important part of how we live as a family.
So we've heard from some families and their struggles with forgiveness, but we wanted to continue that conversation with our very special guests, Susan and Urby Potvin. And we've asked you to come on because you have a very particular story to tell. And Susan, you're a counselor and performer, music minister. You guys have been married how many years?
41.
41 years. Oh my gosh. You don't even look that old to be married 41 years.
Right, sure. Never had a
We're
fight.
still in our honeymoon.
But I think that your experience of the importance of forgiveness is really important. So I was wondering if we could start off by just you kind of telling a little bit about your story of
just
your
sharing
family.
Sure.
Sure. Well, we've adopted 4 children, 2 boys from the United States, 2 girls from the Philippines. That in itself, I think, is just a unique situation, making family out of all different personalities, cultures. But our story goes, I mean, we raised them in Catholic home, Catholic school, you know, all the Christian supports. But our oldest son, unfortunately, his birth parents were drug addicts.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we knew that when we adopted him, but we assumed that environment would take care of everything.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It didn't.
Okay.
He had a very, very addictive personality, very just drawn to addiction. By the time he was 14, he was a full-blown drug addict, alcoholic, like just from when he was 14 to about 18, he just wreaked such havoc in our house, just painful, almost destroyed our whole family life.
Because bringing everybody down.
Oh, everybody, with our 3 younger children, us,
Sure.
and there was not a lot of supports, a lot of coping resources with, you know, a child with drug addiction. It's like that wasn't really heard of like 20 years ago. It was really almost shameful and embarrassing. So it's like, what do you do? What do you do? Long story short, he just went through the whole gamut to the point of running away, stealing things from us. You know, you'd go to find something and it was gone because he had pawned it off at the pawn shop.
Wow.
He had a very repentant spirit, though, and would come back, like every episode, he'd come back and repent, like, Mom and Dad, please forgive me. Really a good heart, a good heart. But the addiction was so powerful, and he couldn't sustain sobriety for more than 3 months. Anyway, I mean, in and out of juvenile, rehab, counseling, you name it.
Had him arrested.
Well, he was arrested a few times. We had to call the sheriff ourselves to have him arrested.
I remember that's got to break your heart to call the police on your own.
Things got so bad, we had to really send him away. It was really collapsing on our entire family. So all the time through this, we're really struggling with, I mean, we're talking about forgiveness today, that forgiveness. And it was truly getting harder and harder. I remember putting this ring on my finger, and it used to say hope. And I made a covenant with the Lord that I would never, ever, ever give up hope on this child.
Wow.
And there were some times that's the only thing that kept me going and us going in our prayer. And I think through all of this, God was teaching us exponentially how to live through this, how to hang on to this son, even though he was doing all these horrendous things to our family, almost destroying our family life.
Yeah.
Because since he was adopted, there was some gut level feeling in us that, you know, he had already been, in a sense, rejected once. You know, like, I mean, not rejected, but his birth mother just couldn't care for him.
Rejection.
Yeah, definitely.
She couldn't. I mean, in all love, she, you know, gave him up. But in a child's heart, that's rejection. And they're like, they can't understand why that they're not, you know. But we knew that when we adopted our children, it was a forever deal.
Yeah.
And there was no way that we could turn our back on him.
Right.
So trying to learn this lesson of how do you try to keep loving them, forgiving them, but yet holding all the boundaries and letting the consequences happen was very, very difficult.
Now, Urby, I know that a little bit about Justin's story is that his life has been somewhat turned around. I don't know if you could tell about
Yeah.
that turning point.
When we sent him away, we sent him to Arizona because there was a place there that really catered to addiction in a different way, which is a heart sick program, which it was run by former addicts.
Okay.
And they had an 18-month period that they would train and work with them. And he did that for a number of years, not a number of months. And he got more privileges. And then at a certain point, he went out with the boys for a drink. But knowing my son, he cannot just take one drink. So he got a few drinks, and then he went back to the halfway house. And the policy there is that if you mess up, you're out. You're back. So he was out in the streets. So we lost contact with him, and he ended up in jail because he did some robbery, and we never heard. And we were praying during that time. It was during Lent, and we were doing novenas. We were just crying out to the Lord. We're like, where is he? We don't want to, him being a John Doe someplace, and we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were praying through it all, and we got a phone call from Maricopa Sheriff's Department, and we're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
And it's Justin, and he says, Mom and Dad, I'm in jail, but I'm okay.
Okay.
Well, he asked, he says, I really messed up this time. And he said, all I'm asking from you is prayer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
So, but the long story short with that, he had a 12-and-a-half-year sentence, was in prison for all that time, has been out now for 3 years, is completely clean and sober.
Praise God.
Whole life turned around. But I know we'd like to address the part of what that forgiveness looked like in the midst of all that, because it was so difficult.
That's devastating.
When someone in your own family, in that close-knit family, wrongs you so greatly, and our children were really, really hurt too, because all our energies were going to try to care for Justin, and so everyone was hurt in our family. That's kind of our whole story of what we could share of. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, first of all, because I think it's a really powerful story, and it's a story of hope, praise God, that Justin is out and he's sober. But let's just step back for a second and say, what is forgiveness and what is forgiveness not? Because you've had to learn some really clear boundaries in all of this journey. So what is forgiveness and what is it not?
Yeah, forgiveness is canceling a debt. It's canceling a debt. Like when someone hurts you, they've taken something from you, whether it's trust or physical things or how they've wounded you, and it's there, but it's our generosity and our mercy of canceling that debt.
Yeah.
I was just thinking too, it's like if we approach it without faith, we cannot proceed to forgive.
Okay.
Because
you have to have faith.
Yeah.
Having, believing that we can overcome this is believing that God, who is the author of life, who is the one who is the God of the possible, that he can change that. And I need to get on board with that and ask the Lord to give me the gift of faith and the grace of forgiveness. But forgiveness is not the emotion. It's like making that decision and then operating out of that, because we're focused on our belief in the Lord and we have a hope that God will answer, and it's because of his love. It wasn't easy. I remember one time you were out in the woods and just crying out to the Lord.
Crying in tears, screaming out
the neighbors
to the Lord
were
in
looking
prayer.
around like,
what's going on?
She was stomping like a wild woman,
Yeah.
But it was just like, God,
help.
Right.
God was saying, to us, it's like, hang in there. And we're like, how much more? But it's like, if we're following the Lord,
Wow.
he brought, God brought his son, to the point where men crucified him and suffered. I'm trying to follow Jesus.
Right.
And I'm going to go through the suffering, but I'm going to have to rely on his grace.
Yeah.
There's no way up.
And just going back to the first kind of definition, the canceling of the debt. First, the assumption there is that there is a debt.
There is a debt.
There's something that has been wrong. There is a party. We have been hurt, wounded, stolen from, whatever the situation.
It's not saying it doesn't matter, because it does matter.
Or saying
It matters,
I should just overlook that.
Yeah.
No,
forgiveness, it cancels a debt, but it's a choice, like Urby said.
I love that. It's not emotion.
It's not emotion.
It's a choice.
So yeah, if you find yourself saying like, I don't feel like forgiving, well, no, we don't.
That's right.
That's a cop-out,
No, it's
really.
Forgiveness is a choice, and we choose it because God forgave us.
Yeah.
You asked, like, what is forgiveness and what is it not? I think where we get really tripped up is the fact that forgiveness and reconciliation are two entirely different things. Forgiveness takes one person. Reconciliation takes two. So we can cancel a person's debt because it frees us.
Yeah,
I'm
that's big.
not looking to my son to change his behavior to fill my need.
Okay.
Only God can fill my need. Like I've been hurt, I've been wounded. Like, and we're not talking yet about restitution. We're not talking about reconciliation. We're just talking about getting free. So I can't wait for his behavior so that my life can move on.
Yes, because then we're trapped.
We're trapped,
And
exactly.
then we become the victim.
They hold power over us, and then that
Yes.
turns into bitterness,
Yes.
anger. It festers.
Yeah, that
it
whole
puts
resentment.
walls.
Yeah.
It's destructive.
Like they say,
Destroys the-
holding unforgiveness is like drinking
Drinking
poison
poison.
and waiting for the other person to die.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's like, and that's really
Doesn't
what
work
I'm
out so well.
describing.
Yes.
You know,
True.
So here we are. So our son Justin is in prison, right, for all the wrongs he did, and he's paying the debt to society for what he did. You know, he made his restitution. He had to pay back things. He's sitting there in prison for 12 and a half years. If he had never had a heart conversion and changed his behavior and his attitude, if he was going to come out of prison and still be a drug addict and just abusing drugs, abusing people by stealing, things like that, we would have never let him into our house.
That's right. Yeah.
You don't let someone come into your house. Like, that's a good boundaries. That's healthy boundaries. And I think that's confusing as Christians. We think that forgiveness, I have to let them back in. No, you don't.
Right.
You put up a healthy boundary that keeps you safe and releases them. And you're hopefully praying for them, power of prayer, that God will have mercy on them.
That's right.
yeah.
So once our son was in prison, we worked through our hurt. We forgave him, which released him. We were at peace. We could move on. Then we were in a position to sit there and kind of wait. Like, we would go and visit him at the prison, but it was kind of like,
Yeah.
you know,
Wait and see.
we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Like, we're still going to love you. We're never going to leave you or, abandon you.
Right.
But your behaviors can't come in to
Right.
this space. But so when he got to a place pretty quickly, left about a year into prison, one of the times we visit him, and he just broke down and repented and asked forgiveness. And when we choose to forgive, but see, we don't come into, like, God doesn't receive us into his family until we turn and reconcile with him, when we have the fruit of changed behavior. When we turn around and say, God, I need you.
Right.
Yes.
He's always there. God is always there.
Ready
He's
to.
always forgiven us, and he always stands in perfect love for us.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what we're called to do as parents
Yeah.
and spouses.
Yes.
And that's
That's hard.
We're not God. We don't have the perfect love. We struggle with it. But that's like what Urby said before. We can't do this without faith and hope and that love that is a grace.
Yeah. Because really, we are so broken.
Yeah.
And I think that, when we recognize ourselves, where we're at, and how much we have been forgiven, that helps nudge us on the way, right?
Yeah.
And you have to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
I know that there's people out there who are watching this who are like, oh no, my situation is so bad.
Yeah.
God can't fix this.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
Yeah. I would say, wow, yeah, God is so much bigger than this. And if we can take in that love of the Father through Jesus, that's it. See, he's asking us to be supernatural in our love, beyond our human capacity. But that's what Christian parents are called to be.
Yeah.
And our families are schools of virtue.
Yes.
Like, I love how Urby was talking about, it's when we came together in this covenant. it's not all happy and rosy.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
no, this is like, I call it like sandpaper ministry. It's
We bring all our garbage, we
we
just
do,
dump
but
it.
this is if we can stick together with that covenant. That's why covenant is so important, and I think it's why I made that like covenant to God. I would never give up on Justin.
Yes.
Because I needed something outside of myself that would hold me accountable to not run away from this when it got hard.
Right.
Like what I say, and I speak a lot about this. I speak in a lot of different ministry settings, but I like to give a visual example. Like the way we're called to hang on to our kids is you don't hold them like this, like a handshake. You hold them like this. So try that. It's like just try that.
Like this.
Now, if I'm
Try
the
to pull
kid
out.
and I let go,
Right.
it's like
So if I'm
Papa's
like this.
still hanging
I
on.
let go too.
Yeah.
He's never going to let go.
Right. Right.
Or if I'm Mama and you're the kid and you let go, Mama ain't letting go.
Right.
You don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
I am going to pray you into heaven.
Right.
The prayers
No
of
matter
a
what.
praying parent to pray that. But see, that has to be the mercy in our hearts. We have to forgive. We have to get that grace of God, even if we don't see reconciliation yet.
Yeah.
We have to live that. That's the cross we carry. We didn't only bear or like we adopted or bear children into this world. We're to bear them into the next world. So hopefully our kids have seen how we've always forgiven each other in humility. And
Right.
that's a hard one. I don't like
Yeah.
saying I'm sorry.
I know.
I got to say
I
sorry.
say it all the time
Yeah.
to myself.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear. But it has to start with us. Our kids have to see. So our kids have seen how we have forgiven Justin, and all our kids have felt that forgiveness.
Yeah, because you're teaching really the other kids too.
And they
how to
know
walk
that they
this.
know
Yeah.
that they know that they're loved.
Wow.
Right.
They know that they're loved.
We begin with an examination for our relationships. Before we do an examination of conscience and how we may have sinned that day, we take time for the kids to apologize to each other, And it might be a simple little thing, but getting them into that habit that this is what we do.
Yep.
We forgive each other.
just
We're
give
all
it-
good.
yeah.
And then
We
that
all make
gives-
mistakes.
And I think that also teaches them that they can then forgive they can bring it to God and He's going to forgive them. That it's just, this is what we do.
Yeah.
We make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. I what I did was wrong.
Yeah.
Please, will you forgive me?
Yeah.
And knowing that idea again that you said in the very beginning, that this is a debt that's canceled. It's not an emotion.
It's a choice.
This is a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you so much,
Yeah.
Susan
Yeah.
and Urby, for sharing your story and for
yeah.
joining us today. So everyone, you want to stay tuned and we'll do a little summary and give you some practical tips on forgiveness in the family.
So I hope you enjoyed that topic with Susan and Urby Potvin talking about forgiveness. I loved hearing their story, loved unpacking this because this is an important topic, but it's also one that really cuts home to all of us. And no matter where you are, we always need forgiveness. So we want to share with you some ideas for you to implement. First, we need to understand that forgiveness is not an emotion. It is a choice to cancel a debt. And I love the way they talk about that, canceling a debt, which means there was a debt. There was a wrong, there was a wound, there was a hurt, a damage that was done. But we're choosing to mercifully cancel that debt.
Number 2, remember that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. Forgiveness is one person, right? We can make a choice to forgive by ourselves, regardless of the action of the other person. Reconciliation is different. That takes 2 people, and that's when the other person, the one who has hurt you, takes responsibility for what they've done, and that's when the relationship can be restored. But remember, both of those require good boundaries to make sure that you are respecting the dignity of yourself and your own emotions and your own mental health.
And number 3, realize that the need for forgiveness never ends. We need to forgive others. We need to ask forgiveness of God, but we also need to forgive ourselves, give ourselves grace and patience when we don't always get it right. There are so many things that we all have done, ways that we have failed, ways that we regret. As parents, we look back so many times with regret, right? We can ask the Lord to forgive us and to forgive others.
And last, in your home, create a habit of asking for forgiveness. This is something that we have done very often with our own children. And so if someone offends somebody else, you don't just go and say, "Oh, I'm sorry." And the response is, "That's okay." No, that's not forgiveness, because it's not okay. A child, an adult, needs to say, this is what I did to you. It was wrong of me to do that. Will you forgive me?
They got to ask.
They have to ask for forgiveness. Will you forgive me? And then the response is, I forgive you. That is forgiveness and reconciliation between two people. And that is a very important habit that we need to develop within our own homes. I hope this episode has been a great blessing to you and to your family, because forgiveness is absolutely so important to practice between us and our relationship with God, but also between spouses and between parents and children. So we really hope that you take some time to really think about this and talk to your spouse of how can we have more forgiveness in our family? How can we teach our children better how to forgive each other and even how to forgive us when we fall down? So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, and you're not going to want to miss out on our final episode of Family here with Shalom World. We're going to be talking about the indispensable role that your family plays in the world. There's a great history, there's a great lesson for all of us that even in our small day-to-day world, we're having a profound effect on the world. So stay with us, and until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.
We hope this episode has been a blessing to you. And if it has, we ask that you prayerfully consider supporting Shalom World so we can create more episodes, more shows like this that will serve families throughout the world.
Yeah, we've been excited and honored to partner with Shalom World on this, and we want to invite you and really encourage you to make a donation in support of Shalom World. No gift is too small and no gift is too large. We'll take all donations to support Shalom World and continue to evangelize the culture.
Are you searching for answers? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.